The palace walls have heard countless secrets whispered in the shadows, but none prepared for the devastating night when Queen Camilla was publicly humiliated, her tears falling in front of the royal world brought to her knees by Princess Catherine's shocking and audacious actions, a move that no one ever thought possible. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the eerie sound of a monarchy teetering on the brink of collapse. Was Princess Catherine acting out of justice, or was it a calculated act of revenge for long-buried secrets that finally came to light? If you believe it was justice, comment with number 1, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button because hidden within this story are truths that no one has dared to reveal. It all started like any other royal evening, glamorous, filled with pomp and ceremonial precision. But beneath the dazzling lights and the meticulously planned protocols, there was an undeniable tension in the air. The whispers had already begun to circulate in the hallowed halls of Buckingham Palace in the days leading up to the event. Whispers of a hidden decree, a daring move that had the potential to unravel the monarchy from the inside. Something was brewing, something that could change the royal family forever. The guests, typically the picture of composure and grace, couldn't conceal the unease flickering in their eyes, as if each one was silently bracing for a revelation that could shatter the very foundation of the royal world. Camilla, radiant in her perfectly tailored attire, entered the grand hall with her signature confidence, certain that tonight would be her moment, the evening when her position as queen beside Prince Charles would be solidified and celebrated. But as she mingled among the guests, exchanging polite smiles and rehearsed pleasantries, an unsettling sensation crept over her. The air felt thick with tension, a chill that no amount of royal poise could mask, and she couldn't ignore the growing sense that something was about to unfold, something she wasn't prepared for. The soft murmur of conversations and the occasional applause faded into the background as if the room itself held its breath. Even the ever-obliging staff, usually quick to bow and offer their greetings, seemed to deliberately avoid her gaze. The atmosphere was thick, but not with celebration, rather, with the heavy weight of anticipation as if something monumental was about to unfold. Across the grand hall, Catherine stood. Her presence was unmistakable, almost magnetic, drawing every eye in the room. Gone was the demure image the public had come to know. In its place was a woman radiating not just grace, but an unwavering resolve, a quiet strength that seemed to challenge the very air around her. The contrast was stark, and it was clear to all that something had shifted. Her presence at the ceremony wasn't that of a mere guest. It felt as if she were the one in control. Those nearby couldn't help but be drawn to her calm authority, sensing an undeniable shift in the air. Catherine's quietness that night spoke volumes. Her smile seemed pleasant, but there was a firmness behind it that cut deeper than any weapon. As for Camilla, despite her outward confidence, the mounting pressure was unmistakable with each passing minute. Even the most experienced advisors who had seen it all couldn't ignore the sense that history was being redefined in real time. The atmosphere was thick with tension, not from chaos, but from the undeniable sense that something inevitable was approaching. It felt as if the entire palace was holding its breath, waiting for the storm that loomed on the horizon. For weeks, whispers had circulated about secret meetings involving Catherine, mysterious documents, and the silent, steadfast support from William. While many had written these rumors off as mere gossip tonight with the determination in Catherine's gaze and Camilla's wavering composure, it was impossible to ignore the feeling that something profound, something game-changing was unfolding before their eyes. In a dimly lit corner, aides exchanged nervous glances, their eyes revealing the quiet understanding that a confrontation was rapidly approaching. Whispers floated around, some suggesting that Catherine embodied the spirit of Princess Diana, an unfulfilled sense of justice that the public had longed for. Others argued that it wasn't about revenge, but rather restoration, a necessary reckoning to cleanse the monarchy of the lingering shadows that still haunted it. No matter what the truth was, one thing was clear. The stage was set for a public confrontation, an event that would not only shape Camilla's future, but alter the course of royal history in a way never before witnessed. What had started as a dignified royal banquet was on the brink of transforming into a battleground where honor, power, and loyalty would collide with unrelenting force. For years, Princess Catherine had kept her composure and grace, but beneath that smile, a quiet war with Camilla had been simmering, one that had quietly raged in the shadows of Buckingham Palace. To the world, Catherine was the embodiment of resilience and dignity, but deep inside, she bore a weight that no crown could ever lift. She had watched Camilla's influence quietly rise, taking root at the very core of the monarchy. Each gesture, each decision Camilla made served as a constant reminder that the woman once considered an outsider was now steering the very fate of the throne. What began as a flicker of discomfort within Catherine gradually morphed into a burning anger, and that anger hardened into an unyielding determination. The breaking point came after the coronation, when titles once reserved for royal legends were bestowed upon Camilla, an undeniable recognition of her new role as queen consort. For many, it seemed like a mere formality, but for Catherine, it felt like a deep betrayal. She didn't view it as just an elevation of Camilla's status, but as a rewriting of history, one that silenced Queen Elizabeth's subtle warnings and buried Diana's sacrifice beneath the weight of pomp and ceremony. Each ribbon of honor draped across Camilla's chest to Catherine was not just a mark of glory, but a dagger driven deep into the legacy she had vowed to protect. That bitterness spread through every aspect of royal life. Family dinners, once filled with light-hearted conversation, now grew cold and tense, filled with unspoken suspicion and glances sharper than any words could convey. Behind closed doors, heated debates erupted, silent yet undeniable, revealing the growing rift that no one dared to voice aloud. The atmosphere grew suffocating, and Catherine's silence became more perilous than any open confrontation. Bolstered by her newfound honors, Camilla wrongly interpreted Catherine's restraint as a sign of weakness. But in reality, Catherine no longer had the will to endure humiliation for the sake of peace. Every slight, every decision that elevated Camilla above her sowed the seeds of a carefully cultivated silent rebellion deep within Catherine's heart. Beside Catherine stood William, steadfast yet measured. He shared her anger and the belief that the crown was slipping into the hands of those he deemed unworthy. But he also carried the weight of being a son who wanted to see his father's happiness in Camilla's presence. His loyalty to Diana's memory remained unshakable, but his duty to the monarchy called for caution, forcing him to walk a delicate line between personal conviction and royal obligation. William urged patience, cautioning that a public confrontation could fracture the monarchy itself. But even he couldn't ignore the fire that burned within Catherine. She listened, yet no longer held back by doubt. The time for restraint was over. Loyalty to Queen Elizabeth's memory demanded action, and her devotion to Diana's legacy called for nothing less than justice. Catherine began to plan quietly, and with precision, ensuring every move was calculated and every word spoken to the right ears. She understood that the future of the monarchy wasn't just tied to Charles's reign, but to eliminating the shadows that had settled over it for decades. She could not stand by and watch Camilla be elevated as a symbol of royal honor when her position was founded on scandal, betrayal, and broken promises. This was not a sudden, impulsive strike. It was a battle Catherine had been quietly waging for years, a war fought not with shouts or fury, but with strategy and unwavering resolve. When she finally chose to act, her target was not petty grievances or minor slights. Catherine aimed directly at the core of the newfound power Camilla had claimed. Catherine targeted the titles and symbols that had transformed Camilla from a mere consort into the embodiment of a true queen. She knew exactly where to strike, and when the time came, she would do so with unerring precision. When Catherine finally moved, it wasn't for trivial matters. It was to strike at the heart of what Camilla held most dear, the honors she had fought for and cherished. In the dead of night, a document appeared on the king's desk, a royal decree signed by Catherine herself, boldly questioning the legitimacy of the very titles Camilla had spent years trying to secure. The document was neither rushed nor impulsive. It was crafted with surgical precision, each sentence thoughtfully constructed to strike at the core. Catherine had spent years studying every facet of royal protocol, understanding even the most subtle intricacies. And now she wielded that knowledge not for ceremonial purposes, but as a weapon in a quiet yet powerful war. Catherine understood that the monarchy endures through documents like this, that words inked in official records carry more weight than any whisper or outburst of anger. This was not a letter of request, but a firm, unyielding decree. On the surface, it appeared simple, its language restrained, yet the power and significance reverberated through every corner of the palace. The titles and privileges Camilla had desperately clung to in order to solidify her royal status were now wiped away with a single decisive stroke of Catherine's pen. It was a stark reminder that in the world of thrones and royal bloodlines, legacies could be rewritten in an instant. The document bore the royal seal, making it inviolable and indisputable. Its power didn't arise from Catherine's anger, but from the very framework of the monarchy she had vowed to uphold. By skillfully navigating the intricate and often obscure rules of royal protocol rules that held unquestionable authority, Catherine ensured that this decree could never be dismissed as a mere act of personal vengeance. It stood unyielding not as a matter of opinion, but as a decree of law. As the final stroke of the pen swept across the page, the atmosphere thickened, charged with a weight unlike anything before. It wasn't just ink on paper, it was destiny. Catherine grasped the full magnitude of her actions. History pressed heavily upon her, yet she did not waver. For Catherine, this was never simply about Camilla. It was about honoring Queen Elizabeth's legacy, about Diana's unhealed wounds, about shielding the throne from a darkness that refused to fade. This decree became Catherine's weapon, silent yet devastating like a sword wrapped in the formality of royal duty. Word of the decree spread quietly among those closest to the throne. Some advisors whispered in admiration, seeing for the first time in Catherine the iron resolve that would shape the monarchy's future. They admired her courage, her steadfast refusal to compromise, and her unwavering determination to protect the dignity of the throne, even if it meant shattered hearts along the way. Yet there were also those who recoiled, their voices trembling with fear. Which side are you on? If you see Catherine as a symbol of bravery and righteousness, comment 2. But if this change unsettles you, comment 0. Enjoy the video and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next jaw-dropping revelations. They cautioned that the consequences could spiral out of control, Charles's fury, Camilla's wrath, and a kingdom unprepared for an open battle within the palace walls. To them, Catherine's boldness, was a perilous gamble, one too dangerous to take. But Catherine didn't draft this decree in search of their approval. She wrote it to end a war. Meanwhile, Camilla moved through her days, blissfully oblivious to the storm, quietly gathering beneath her. She carried herself with the poise of a queen who thought her position was unshakable, unaware that her power was being quietly erased in the silence around her. Though she still smiled for the cameras and greeted guests, her honors had already been revoked, waiting for the right moment to be fully taken from her. The irony was sharp. Her victory had never seemed so assured, yet the very ground beneath her was beginning to crumble. The decree was not just a law, it was a reckoning. It was a message of revenge disguised in the form of royal ceremony, signaling that Catherine's patience had worn thin and mercy was no longer an option. In a world ruled by symbols, Catherine chose the most unforgiving one of all Camilla's honors, once the crown jewels of her triumph now stripped away before she even had time to comprehend the loss. But the ink on Catherine's decree was more than mere words. It was the ticking clock marking Camilla's inevitable downfall, and the moment it was delivered would be the final fatal blow. When Queen Camilla opened the letter, her hands trembled. The crown on her head felt heavier than it ever had, and suddenly her reign seemed to be teetering on the edge of collapse. The envelope, innocent in appearance, concealed a decree that would shake her to her very core. She broke the seal, expecting a routine message, but what she found inside was the cruelest truth of her life. One by one, the words stripped away the honors she had fought for her entire life, the very honors that had allowed her to stand beside the king. For years, Camilla had fought relentlessly to shed the label of outsider, to be seen not just as Charles's partner, but as an integral part of the throne. And now, with one ruthless stroke, everything she had worked for was wiped away. At first, doubt gripped her, her eyes scanning the lines repeatedly, desperate to find a mistake or some kind of misunderstanding. But there were none. The decree was final, written with unyielding certainty. Her face flushed with anger as the reality sank in, and she struggled to accept the defiance that had just shattered her world. Who dared to orchestrate this betrayal? Camilla had endured countless whispers and relentless scrutiny throughout the years. But this time it was different. This wasn't the usual tabloid gossip or public judgment. This was the throne itself turning its back on her. And to her shock, it wasn't Charles behind this, but Catherine. The betrayal ran deeper than anything Camilla had ever conceived, striking at the very foundation of her power. Charles had always been Camilla's protector, standing by her through countless scandals and suspicions. Yet this time, the document bore the unmistakable mark of Catherine, his daughter-in-law. It was Catherine's hand that had orchestrated this fatal strike, a strategy that used the royal institution itself as a weapon. Camilla had underestimated her before mistaking Catherine's grace and silence for submission. Now she was forced to confront the undeniable truth. Catherine's silence was not mere passivity. It was the silence of a carefully calculated plan. It wasn't the king, but Catherine who wielded the kind of power capable of toppling Camilla's position. In the privacy of her chamber behind closed doors, Camilla's anger gradually ebbed, replaced by a deep, suffocating despair. The confidence she had once paraded before the world melted away completely as she crumbled, overcome with humiliation, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs. The courtiers and staff, once in awe of her resilience, now whispered about her fall, labeling it an irreversible collapse. A queen not dethroned by scandal or public opinion, but by a chilling blow struck from within her own family. That image lingered ominously. Camilla had been defeated not by the people's judgment, but by the cold, calculating hand of Catherine. Even as Camilla's heart shattered, the monarchy continued its relentless march. The cold, indifferent royal machine kept turning, events were scheduled, duties were carried out, and appearances were made. No one allowed Camilla's tears to halt the progress of the crown. No one spared a moment's pity for her humiliation. To the world, the monarchy remained unyielding, weathering every storm. Yet behind that polished facade, the reign of a woman was crumbling before it could even take hold. The letter was more than just a document. It was a stark message, one that shattered the illusion of Camilla's security. It spoke in words colder than steel, declaring that her position was fragile and the power she held was never truly hers. Catherine made sure this humiliation wouldn't remain a private affair. It would reverberate through every corner of the kingdom, spreading like wildfire and forever taint her crown in darkness. The night Camilla had once dreamed of reigning alongside Charles now became a living nightmare, haunted by the shadow of darkness and the cold, ruthless gaze of Catherine. However, Camilla's tears were not the end. They marked the beginning of the storm Catherine had carefully set in motion. Few knew that Catherine was not alone in this struggle. Behind her stood William, the quiet yet unwavering husband, the future heir to the throne, ready to see Camilla's power crushed. To the world, William portrayed calmness and diplomatic restraint, the image of a future king who prized unity above all else. But beneath that composed exterior, he stood firmly beside Catherine, fully aware of the weight of their shared mission. But beneath that polished mask lay a sharp determination, forged through years of hardship, and an unshakable loyalty to a woman who was not only his love, but also his mission. Catherine may have held the pen, but William's presence was ever at her side, guiding and fortifying her resolve. Every careful step Catherine took had William's silent consent and unwavering support. It was this quiet, steadfast partnership that empowered her to challenge a queen who had once believed herself untouchable. William's position was more complex than Catherine's, yet no less fierce. His loyalty to the memory of Diana burned relentlessly within him, shaping his vision for the monarchy's future. He had witnessed the storm that shattered his mother, felt the weight of her pain, and carried the scars left by the scandals that nearly destroyed the throne. To William, Camilla was an unhealed wound, a lingering ghost of betrayal threatening to tarnish the crown he was destined to inherit. This is not hatred, but duty. He cannot allow the future of the monarchy to be defined by a figure who continues to divide the nation. Therefore, while he remains cautious in public, William's heart aligns with every step Catherine takes. His silence holds more weight than any spoken word. But William does not rely on faith alone. He begins quietly forging connections with allies within the royal family, carefully building support networks to bolster Catherine's position. The senior courtiers who once feared Camilla's growing influence now find a confidant in William, a quiet force working behind the scenes. The advisors who once hesitated at Catherine's boldness now find reassurance in knowing the heir to the throne stands firmly by her side. These alliances are not forged through grand speeches, but through quiet whispers in selective conversations and subtle nods in the palace corridors, creating a shared sense of purpose. Together, William and Catherine form an unbreakable shield, ensuring that when the final blow lands, it won't be the rebellion of a single woman, but a calculated vision for the monarchy's survival. Nevertheless, William could not avoid confronting his father. In private conversations, he spoke with words laced with both responsibility and sorrow. Camilla's reign cannot last. He didn't speak as a son to his father, but as the heir to the throne addressing the king. He reminded Charles of the public's trust, the dangers of allowing a past scandal to define a new era, and the risk of alienating a nation still clinging to the memory of Diana. His words carried undeniable truth, but Charles, blinded by loyalty and love, dismissed them. To him, his son's concerns seemed like exaggerations born more of resentment than reason. William's pleas were rejected, and in that refusal his resolve only deepened. By the time Catherine took decisive action to strip Camilla of her honors, the agreement between William and his wife was unshakable. He no longer sought compromise, nor did he expect his father to understand what he had come to see so clearly. William and Catherine stand united bound, not just by love, but by loyalty, pain, and an unshakable faith in each other. Their alliance is not merely a marriage, but a political and strategic partnership unbreakable. Camilla may wear the crown, but the future now belongs to William and Catherine. In this reality, Camilla's downfall becomes inevitable. Yet it is William's loyalty to his wife that places him in direct conflict with his father. The fracture within the family is now too deep to hide. For King Charles, the decree was more than just a political crisis. It was a dagger, piercing through the two women who had shaped his life. His wife, who had once ascended the throne, and his daughter-in-law, who carried the lingering shadow of Diana. When news of Catherine's actions reached him, anger was his immediate response. He paced in silence, his face stiff with disbelief, his words short and sharp, struggling to comprehend how such a decision could have been made without his consent. Beneath his anger, there was something deeper and far more dangerous. Charles understood that the monarchy was always a delicate balance between public support and private loyalty. And now that balance had been shattered. His heart was tangled in a way only he could comprehend. On one side stood Camilla, the woman who had stood by him through countless mockeries and rejections, the partner he had fought to legitimize against all odds. On the other side was Catherine, the embodiment of continuity, beloved by the people, carrying a serene grace that reminded many of Diana. Both women had shaped his journey, but now their very existence clashed like fire and water, suffocating him in a haze of turmoil. Protecting Camilla meant facing the public's fury. Supporting Catherine meant betraying the woman who had given him strength when the world turned its back on him. In those long, agonizing moments, Charles's mind returned to the words once whispered to him privately by Queen Elizabeth. She had warned him about Camilla's limitations, reminding him that the monarchy demands sacrifice, not indulgence. Elizabeth never directly confronted Camilla, but she understood that Camilla could never fully embody the throne in the way Catherine could. Those warnings, spoken by the longest reigning monarch in history, now echoed in his mind like thunder. He could no longer dismiss them, yet he found himself unable to face the harsh reality they demanded. Moreover, Charles's declining health only added to the weight of his decisions. His body grew weaker each day, mirroring the quiet unraveling within the royal family. Each passing moment served as a stark reminder of life's fleeting nature, and that his reign would not endure as long as those of his predecessors. The question of succession, once a distant concern, had now become urgent and critical. In this urgency, the advisors around him began whispering sweet, persuasive counsel, "Stand with Catherine, your majesty. Otherwise the monarchy will not survive." Their voices were not cruel, but coldly pragmatic, the voice of those who lived to protect the throne. They spoke plainly. Camilla's reign was unsustainable. Catherine was the future. Opposition, they warned, would not only harm the monarchy, but also destroy the fragile legacy of Charles himself. He listened, but each word felt like a dagger betraying his heart, forcing him to confront the truth he had long denied. The people would never truly accept Camilla as queen. Yet Charles could not act. Silence became his shield, a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. But to Camilla, that silence felt like betrayal. She had stood by him through fire and war only to be left vulnerable when the flames turned against her. The distance between them didn't come from arguments, but from the absence of protection, the very thing she had relied on for so long. She saw in his hesitation not love, but surrender, something that wounded her more deeply than Catherine's decree ever could. As Charles faltered, Catherine's influence only grew stronger. Camilla's tears became the kingdom's new spectacle. When the news broke, the nation didn't mourn Camilla's sorrow, but instead praised Catherine's courage, honoring her as the true queen in the hearts of the people. Across towns and cities, whispers turned into applause, and that applause grew into cheers that no palace gate could contain. The people had long questioned Camilla's power, and now, as Catherine ruthlessly stripped her of honor, those doubts morphed into anger and vindication. They saw in Catherine what they once saw in Diana decades ago, a symbol of dignity, compassion, and unyielding strength, a woman who refused to be silenced or overshadowed by scandal. The headlines ruthlessly exposed the story. Morning papers were flooded with images of Camilla's downfall not as a victim, but as a dethroned imposter. Television commentators expressed both surprise and admiration, calling Catherine's move the boldest step ever taken by a queen consort in modern history. Where Camilla had once fought for recognition, her humiliation now became entertainment dissected on talk shows splashed across tabloids and amplified across social media. Each time the public witnessed her downfall, the realization grew that her reign had been a mistake, a chapter marked by arrogance and unjustly erased. But beneath that spectacle, deeper emotions stirred. Diana's tragedy was reenacted with heartbreaking intensity. The wounds she had left behind, the betrayals she endured, the tears the people never forgot. All of it surged back into the public's memory, reigniting a collective sorrow that had never truly healed. People didn't view Catherine's challenge as mere personal revenge, but as an act of reclaiming historical honor. Catherine did what Diana never had the chance to do, stand up to Camilla and reclaim dignity from the shadows of betrayal. In living rooms and town halls, people spoke of Catherine as Diana's rightful successor, one who carried her legacy with a resolve both subtle and sacred, a quiet strength that honored the past while forging a new path for the monarchy. Public opinion quickly solidified. Polls reflected what many had sensed: trust in Camilla was rapidly collapsing. Her once wavering support plummeted, leaving her standing on increasingly unstable ground. In contrast, Catherine's popularity soared to unprecedented heights. She was no longer just a royal daughter-in-law, but had become the moral compass of the monarchy, a symbol the people rallied behind. The gap between them widened into an unbridgeable chasm. As Catherine was hailed as the future and Camilla condemned as the past, the monarchy transformed overnight. What was once a divided institution clinging to outdated rituals now appears renewed, anchored by Catherine's boldness. The act of stripping Camilla of her title is no longer seen as an act of cruelty, but as a symbolic step toward justice. Justice for Diana, for the monarchy, and for a nation that has waited decades for transparency and accountability from the royal family. It became a moment of reckoning, a turning point, where the past was confronted and the future embraced with resolve. The wave of support for Catherine is no longer just a breeze. It has turned into a tsunami, shaking public opinion, shifting loyalties, and pushing the royal family into a new era where Catherine's influence is undeniable. But while the people outside are hailing Catherine as a new icon within the lavish walls of the palace Camilla, the former queen is quietly plotting a final counterattack. Despite a shattered heart, Camilla refuses to surrender. She will not let the last chapter of her story be written in disgrace, and with quiet determination, she prepares for one final effort to reclaim her place. The tears have dried, replaced by an unprecedented coldness and hard resolve. Inside, Camilla burns a fire of anger, but it is no senseless rage. It is a purposeful fury honed into a resilient will, prepared to do whatever it takes to avoid being erased from history. She is no longer the woman whispered about behind closed doors. Now Camilla rises with the determination of someone who refuses to be cast aside. No matter how Catherine seeks to strip her of her title, Camilla will not allow the throne to be taken from her without a fight. Her first step convincing Charles, her husband and longtime ally, to return to her side. Night after night, she whispers to him about the years they endured scandals together, the times when the whole world turned its back on them, and only they remained. Camilla reminds him that the throne they hold is a shared achievement, not the success of one alone. But what cuts deeper than any decree from Catherine is Charles's prolonged silence, a silence that speaks volumes. In his eyes, Camilla sees the truth: he no longer has the strength nor the faith to fight for her. And if Charles cannot protect her, then she will save herself. Camilla begins reaching out to her former supporters, old allies, influential figures behind the scenes, and those who owe her favors. In secret conversations behind closed doors, she paints Catherine not as the savior of the monarchy, but as an invader of the throne, one who is sowing division from within. Camilla calls on everyone to rise up, reminding them that she is far from finished and that the fight is far from over. But every promise of support rang hollow, and every secret conversation quickly found its way to Catherine's side. Camilla's grip on the palace slipped away. Everything tipped in favor of the woman she despised most. Yet Camilla did not stop. In late-night clandestine meetings, she revealed her desperation through grave warnings. She spoke of secrets hidden in drawers and safes, letters and confessions that could destroy reputations and shake the public's trust in the monarchy to its core. She hinted that if Catherine intended to bury her, she would drag many others down with her. However, those threats did not have the desired effect. Instead of instilling fear, they ignited rumors of mental instability. Palace staff whispered that Camilla was spiraling into a crisis. To them, her threats were no longer a display of strength, but the unmistakable sign of a queen on the verge of collapse, desperately clinging to power as everything around her crumbled. Once a woman whose gaze and words commanded both fear and respect, Camilla's voice has now become nothing more than empty echoes, a storm that has lost its thunder. The more she struggles, the more isolated she becomes. Those who once sympathized with her and stood by her in difficult times have now pulled away. They no longer dare to stake their futures on a queen who has lost her power, a woman beyond redemption. Camilla may refuse to admit it, but the truth surrounds her from every angle, clear and undeniable. Catherine has won. From the palace corridors to the advisors, and even in the hearts of the people, all have turned their backs on her. The battle she's trying to hold on to is no longer one of resistance. It is surrender dressed in the illusion of resilience. And just when Camilla thought she was poised to make her final move in this power struggle, Catherine delivered the finishing blow. Before the eyes of the entire court, the public and the world, Princess Catherine stepped forward with a calm, almost cold demeanor, and the final decree was read aloud like a royal sentence. Camilla was stripped of all honors. The crown remained an empty keepsake, but her honor and pride were mercilessly torn apart. The room fell into a heavy silence, and then a collective gasp echoed a small sound, yet it reverberated like thunder through the marble halls. Catherine stood there unwavering, as steady as a living statue, her gaze cold and her voice clear, resolute, and unshaken. Meanwhile, Camilla, once a symbol of strength and sharp resolve, could no longer maintain her composure. Before millions of eyes and countless cameras, she broke down. Tears flowed uncontrollably as the image of a dethroned queen spread across the global media. Charles, her husband, sat motionless. His face was pale, devoid of any word or gesture. It was this silence that cut Camilla the deepest. He did not rise to defend her because he understood if he did, he would be standing in opposition to the unstoppable force of history in motion. Then what stunned everyone even more happened. Prince William stepped forward, not just as Catherine's husband, but as the future heir to the throne, publicly standing by her side in a powerful affirmation of the monarchy's future. The room seemed to tilt. The crown did not fall from Camilla's head, but the power had slipped from her hands forever. This wasn't just the revocation of a title. It was a transfer of power without the need for a coronation. In the hearts of the people, Catherine had already become a true queen. And as Camilla's tears were captured across headlines and video clips, history didn't just record a humiliating fall, it marked a new turning point the night Catherine officially became unstoppable. What do you think about this moment? Are we witnessing a true piece of history unfold? Leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Was this justice, a power shift, or something more? Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to support us in creating more high-quality content, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and welcome to a new era.